is on the legend, WDXE.
Speaking of legends, Stan Pierchoski's in it.
Wow.
It's the Stan Pierchoski Hour, buddy. Estate plan Stan, of course, Bulletproof estate planning. And the phone lines are always open here for you, too. 766-9393, because if you have questions, Stan can handle it. I promise you, regarding estate planning and wills and trust and all that stuff. I've learned so much listening and talking with you. And I've got a lot of comments. I think you were just mentioning before we went on the air that you had a lot of comments of folks that listen in and have learned a lot as well.
What a great way to start the Friday with that introduction. Maybe I'll just let you finish talking for the rest of the hour. It sounds great. No, thank you for those words. People bump into people here and there. They come to see me.
Sure.
And, many of them mention that they listen to us here on WDXE. So,
absolutely.
I've always, I really liked it when you decided to go to this talk radio format because I think everybody listens to talk radio at one time or another.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
I like to listen
to a lot of comments.
I like to listen to music too, but I mean, I can't do it constantly.
Yeah.
But and I like doing it. I don't mind doing it a bit. And like I said many times, you said the phone lines are open. I like to encourage that. We like to encourage questions. And there's a couple of reasons why we do that. Even our seminars we often have many, big question and answer session, which, by the way, is tomorrow here at WLX.
Oh, that's right.
In the back of the building. We've got a pretty good turnout so far, so it's a good thing because this is a big venue.
Yes.
Not sure how many tables you have back there, but I'm probably fixing to find out.
We got plenty.
So, that's tomorrow at 10 o'clock right here, the back of WLX.
Yes.
At what they call the Country Cafe. There's no sign that says Country Cafe, so don't be looking for one. It's just the back of the building. The radio station's up in the front.
You have to be in the know to
That's
get
right. That's right. If you can't it's great if you RSVP, so we have head counts and get tables and chairs set up. But if you can't, and at the last minute, you feel like you say, you talk to the wife and say, let's pop on over there. Go ahead. It's not a formal RSVPing. Like I said, I often say that one of the main reasons we do it is because some of the girls make light refreshments. And now, when I say light refreshments, that's what we mean. It's not, don't make you breakfast. So, but I think the worst thing for the folks that make that stuff, the worst possible thing that could happen would be to not have enough. So head count is important for that. It's also important because I don't like running around at the last second setting up extra tables and chairs. But we always have walk-ins, and so we anticipate some of that. And you always have people that at the last minute can't make it.
Sure.
It works out. It works out. So one thing about my seminars is this year, as we were planning them, I'm probably going to essentially cut the number of them in half. We're going to dial back on those. So, if I'm not sure if I got the whole schedule for the year done. I think we do. I've just not had a chance to look at it and review it. But
right.
So what that means is we're in several counties. We do this here. We do it in Giles County. We do it up in Franklin. We do it in Murray County.
Yes.
We go to Lincoln and Marshall.
Wow.
We go, and so when we go to a place. The next one that might be local will be a while. Like here at WLX.
Sure.
I think the last time we were here was a couple months before Christmas, back in November.
Okay.
So they're going to get spread out a little bit even more. So it doesn't mean you can't come to one that's somewhere else. That happens a lot. I get a lot of people from Lawrenceburg come to Pulaski or vice versa. I got people, I think my record of how far people have driven to come to the seminar was 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
Somebody came from
I remember you telling me about
all
that.
the way across state.
Yeah.
So, and that person came 3 times. Came once and said, there's no way I can explain all this to my wife.
Yeah.
So the next time he came with his wife. And he came a 3rd time and brought his wife's mother because she was, starting to get, looking towards long-term care issue. And so they travel that far because I guess they can't find the information anywhere. Now, I started out by saying questions. So if you have questions, call in on the show. That's exactly what the show is for.
Absolutely.
Or if you come to the seminar, you have a question, bring it with you. And if you bring it with you, you can ask it. If you develop one during the presentation, which people do, jot it down because at the end of the seminar, we have a Q&A. And we build that in. So we're going to do a Q&A whether you have a question or not. So, the reason I like questions, that's what this was leading up to. The reason I like questions are a couple. One, it kind of tells me what your experiences are, kind of how things are going in real life for people that are trying to resolve certain things.
Sure, absolutely.
And so that helps me to kind of focus on how we present the information sometimes.
Yes.
People will ask questions and we'll find this is a major source of misinformation. And so we want to maybe focus on this particular topic a little more to clear it up with folks. And a lot of times people have the same question. And so if you have a question, don't worry. It's not like you're the only one that doesn't understand something. Everybody's in the same boat.
Exactly.
It's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's not your fault. The information is just not available. And what is available is either misleading or incomplete or sometimes just blatantly not right. So we try to clear that up. And that's why we started doing these. We've been doing these for several years now. So yeah, come on to the one tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We actually titled it Wills, Trust, and the Nursing Home.
Yes.
And that's what we talk about. It's kind of a progression through those 3 topics. And we do that for a reason. Most people that come to my seminars, this one, I have a couple of them. This one is titled Wills, Trust, and the Nursing Home. And the reason most people attend it is they want to hear about this solution to the issue of long-term care.
Right.
Now, the solution to long-term care, at least when you're not in the nursing home yet, is a trust. Okay, so I spend the whole first half of the seminar going over this wills and trust, like will versus trust. That's why we call it wills, trust, and the nursing home. We go over will versus trust because if you've not been exposed to what a trust is and kind of how it works, you might not understand the trust that is the solution to the long-term care issue. So I go over that, and I do it kind of a rapid review. I have another seminar that I give, a webinar that is real deep dive of will versus trust. And so what I do, I kind of brief review to get you exposed to what a trust is so that we can go into the topic of long-term care, and you'll have an understanding of the instrument, the tool that we use to avoid going broke in long-term care.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, the other thing in long-term care that I don't get into real deep at the seminar is this concept you hear me talk about of crisis, when somebody's actually there. Because there's many strategies we use when somebody's in care. That we just have to pick the one or the combination of some that fit.
Right.
And those are a little more involved. I mean, I could probably do a 5-hour seminar talking about all those things. So it's really kind of a circumstance-driven thing. So we talk about that. I do talk about it for a little while at the seminar, that there are options out there. We go over a couple of them real quick. But mostly the solution we're looking for is the one you can do ahead of time, in pre-planning for long-term care. There's pre-planning for long-term care, and then there's crisis planning.
Right.
Kind of when you're in crisis and you're already there, well, the trust may not be the best tool now because the trust needs some time to actually be effective.
Yes.
And if you're already in the care, we don't have that time. So
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it's a useful tool at that point, but for the most part, it's not. Then we do the crisis planning tools. Those we can do if you're in care. As a matter of fact, they're only available once you're in care. We can do none of those ahead of time because the first criteria is you got to be in care, and if you're not, you can't use it. So it's everything's procedural, and some of those crisis tools, a couple of them are pretty easy and straightforward. Some get extremely complicated when we're dealing with real property and tying up the title with joint ownership and stuff like that. We have to. It can get very involved. So But the good news is, even if you have no planning, you waited too long, Aunt Gertrude's in nursing home, there's still options. There's still things we can do. And so things we can do that can salvage a majority, if not all, of everything.
Yeah.
Because, the rules are different if you go in the nursing home when you're married than they are if you're single. And when you're single, we have a few things we can't do anymore. We have this whole group of rules called the spousal impoverishment rules.
Right.
And the term is kind of self-explanatory. They're kind of designed so that if somebody goes into long-term care and they're married, and the average cost is pushing $9,500 a month around here.
Oh wow! Yeah, it is.
And if someone goes into care, they're sort of like this huge expense, like this black hole of cost, right?
Yes.
And your healthy spouse at home that's not in care is going to be concerned, certainly about their spouse, but also concerned at what's going to happen if this black hole of cost consumes everything we have. What will I live off of?
And it certainly can.
It certainly can. So, we adopted something back in 2006 called the Deficit Reduction Act. And in that act are what we call the spousal impoverishment rules, which are designed to do just that. Ways to move property to the community spouse, which is the person not in care. We move property to them so that they maintain a standard of living. Okay. Now, that is an important thing to do. And that gives us a lot of things. There's a lot of things we can do when you're married because of these impoverishment rules. Actually, they took quite a few of these away in 2006. I wasn't doing estate law back then, but as I look back, we could do more before then.
Oh, really?
They've taken some of these things away.
Okay.
And I don't doubt. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but the way things go, and they need to collect more and more revenue, we may see some of these things go away. Just like people talk about this 5-year look-back rule increasing in to something other than 5.
Yes, yes,
We know they're going to change that because they already changed it once. Changed it from 3 years to 5.
yes,
And the day is coming, just as sure as we're sitting here talking on the radio, that they're going to change it again.
Yes.
It's not going down. So so far so good, but it's not there yet. But it will happen. And so, when we deal with this crisis stuff, when you're single, sometimes I feel like I'm not like I got a hand tied behind my back, but I can still save a majority of everything. But usually when you're single, there's going to be some loss. Okay,
Right.
It's typically in maybe the 30% range. It's different for everybody, but it hovers around that area, and that's just the nature of the beast. If we hadn't done anything ahead of time, so if we wait till the 11th hour, we're in care,
right.
and we're just dealing with what they have, that's also the most difficult time to deal with real estate.
Yes, it is.
I mean, the best thing to do with real estate, the very, very best thing to do if you've got real property, is to put it in one of these trusts ahead of time.
Yes,
Because then you can do whatever you want with the property. You can give it to your heirs. You can sell it. You can keep it. They can keep it as the homestead, like sentimental, and not have to deal with selling it. When we deal with it in crisis, if I can sell it, I can protect the money pretty easily.
Correct.
A lot of people don't want to sell it; they want to keep it. So it gets a little cumbersome. That's a difficult asset at the last minute.
right.
Money in the bank is usually pretty straightforward and easy to deal with. We just have to do what we do with it to make it to protect it. So.
Yes,
But anyway, again, if you're in any of these boats, right up in the beginning, it's like, well, I need to do something. I don't know should I do a will or a trust or something. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And if we'll see what a will does and doesn't do, and then we'll see what a trust does and doesn't do. And if you're in the boat of you want to do some pre-planning, you're not really worried about long-term care because you're in midlife. It's kind of like I said when I was in my 30s or 40s.
Right.
I'm not going to worry about that.
Yeah.
I'll deal with that later.
yeah, we'll deal with it later.
And I get it. That's okay. You don't have to deal with that at this point. But then the traditional foundational planning with like a revocable living trust is a perfect tool. Make sure your family's taken care of if something happens to you.
Exactly.
But then if you're also in the boat where you are in our age bracket, and you're either retired or getting near retirement, and you're concerned that, gee, my wife and we're healthy right now. We're okay. But what if? What if one of us, you know how people come in and they say so-and-so has dementia. I mean,
Yes.
It just seems to appear. I mean, I'm not the medical person, but some of it you can see coming, I think, and it's hereditary, but some of it just starts one day.
Yes.
And so you're worried if something like that happens, we have to go into long-term care. I sure don't want to go broke because of the high cost.
Right.
That's that trust that we talk about a lot at this seminar tomorrow. So,
Sure.
And we're doing that early in the game, okay? Early enough in the game because there's some time factors associated with that. And I go over that pretty detailed at the seminar. But then there's always, if you don't do anything and it comes up on you too fast, and it just happens. It's just, come into my office one day and say, look, over the weekend my wife had to go to the nursing home and now I'm worried what is going to happen to our stuff. Okay, now
Right.
we're there, okay? So I don't sit there and point finger and say, you should have done this, you should have done that. That's not very helpful.
No.
What we do is we deal with what the facts are. Now, even if you come to me and you're a married couple like that, we can still save everything, 100%. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just when you come to me and now maybe you're the surviving spouse. Okay?
Yes.
And you say, hey, my dad's gone in the nursing home and a mom passed away some years ago, but now he's single and now he's in care. Okay. Now he's a single person and the rules are a little different. And the reason you don't have the spousal impoverishment rules is because now there's no healthy spouse at home to keep from impoverishing.
Yes.
So those things aren't available. But we have other tools available. And we can, like I said, we can save. Typically, sometimes it's as low as about 55 to 60%, and sometimes as high as 80. I think the highest I've managed to do is about 82 or 83%. So
Okay.
it usually hovers around a 70% mark. 70 we can save, and 30 we're going to lose. But it depends on a lot of things because the factors you got to factor in the cost of care, which is kind of different for a lot of people. What their income is, because when you go in the nursing home and you're single, all the income goes to the cost of care.
Yeah.
And so it depends on how much that is.
And if you have planned ahead of time enough, then that 30% is even not taken.
That's right. The 30% is not there.
Yeah, so that's good.
And it's all designed to mitigate and reduce the impact because, let's say you put, 80% of your assets into this asset protection trust, and you do so years ago, right? Now, if one of you go into the nursing home, and of course, when you're married, we can save it all, but let's say if you go into a nursing home when you're single, and we have to deal with this loss. Now we're dealing with 30% loss of the 20% that wasn't in the trust.
Yes.
Not 30% of the entire estate.
Right.
So we seriously mitigate what we have to live with.
Perfect.
And so again, that's what we talk about at the seminar. Now the seminar lasts about an hour and 15 minutes, my presentation. I try so hard to keep it in an hour, but it just never seems to happen. It may sound like a long time, but I'm telling you, when I have it, I can tell by the looks on people's faces.
An hour is not long.
That
with this
hour and
kind of
15
information.
is just like that.
Yeah.
And I look at my watch and think, good grief, how can it be half past already?
Yeah.
So, we try to start as soon as we can at 10. A lot of times we got good turnout tomorrow, so if we see some cars in the parking lot still trying to park and stuff, I'll delay it just a couple minutes.
Right.
But try to get started as soon as we can. And it's pretty much nonstop information for that time.
Sure.
And the only thing I really ask of folks is, if you got a question, I often say, I will not leave the building until the last question's answered. But I just like to keep them to the end because, a lot of times people ask a question and it's like, okay, hang on for like one or two more slides and your answer will be there. So,
Right.
Some folks are just smarter than the presentation, so they ask the question just before I get there. But save it to the end, and then and I think it's a little more helpful for everybody because if you ask a question collectively, other people have the same question on their mind.
Sure, absolutely.
And don't be shy. It's okay. If you do have a question that you think is sensitive, and I kind of don't want to ask it in front of the crowd, catch me on the side. I'll stick around, and we'll spend a little bit of time doing it. So it is really designed for you to come and get some information, figure out what some of these options are. Okay, there's a lot of options. So figure out what they are. I'm pretty confident there's one that will fit your family dynamics.
Absolutely.
And if you decide that's something you want to do, then we can schedule something with me where you get a little more of a deep dive into your family dynamics. And but if not, that's okay too. Have some more refreshments, and we'll part friends. It's okay.
Yes,
I often say I like you to be involved in the decision making process.
Yes.
And how are you going to decide anything if you don't know how it works? Now,
right.
I'm not asking you to graduate from law school and wills and trust 101. I'm not asking that.
Well, I told you I was pretty close to getting my law degree just listening.
But it's not.
Excuse me.
I often tell people it's not a real difficult concept. What it is something when you hear it, it is brand new to your thought process.
Right.
And it's in contradistinction to what you've heard or heard people say or read on the internet. So when you run into something like that, some folks have a hard time keeping the open mind.
Sure.
Now, most people do, but I've run into folks that just, it's almost like, well, I don't see how that can be. I've never heard of that. Well, just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean it can't be, right? It's what you've heard. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to ask you to put aside what you've heard so far because what you've heard is not the full story. Some of there's a glimmer of truth to it, but it's just you haven't heard. I call it the Paul Harvey moment, right? What's Paul Harvey known for? The rest of the story, right? So
the rest of the story.
So we need to talk about the rest of the story, and then you'll start to get it. So again, don't I tell people if you're going to come to my seminar, kind of come with that dry sponge approach, and just let it flow. It'll set. You'll get it.
Yeah,
You'll
exactly.
Get it. Just don't be resistant to it. And if you've got a problem like I'm talking about, why would you be resistant to it if there's a solution out there? So
Yep.
come and hear what it is. That's all I'm asking. I always get somebody to say, well, where's the catch?
Yes.
I say, well, there's no catch. Come and listen. Well, I guess maybe I should probably tell those folks that we do lock the door and don't let you out until you sign something, right? No, it's not like that at all. Come to it, hear what we have to say. If you want to stick around for question and answer, you can. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to talk to me more in depth about something, do so. That's what it's for. I'm trying to get this. I try to battle this misinformation that we hear every day.
Yeah.
And it's for you. It's to help you. No, albeit, this is kind of the work I do as an attorney. So if you decide to do something, I would hope it would be with me, but it doesn't have to be. There's no requirement. There's no pressures. There's no push. It's entirely up to you. And a matter of fact, I don't want to do planning for you unless you put in a little effort to understand how it
Sure,
works.
sure, absolutely.
I've never been an attorney that says, here, you need this trust. Just sign this. Don't worry about what it says. I've already decided it's the best thing for you. I don't do it that way. We're going to talk about it. I did have a couple clients that say, just tell me where to sign. And I said, well, I'll do it fast, but I'm going to go over what it does and what it is. I just, for my sake now,
You
instead
need
of
to
yours.
understand it. You need to understand it as best you can. And you know what? It brings about a level of comfort and ease too, to have the understanding a little bit about what needs to be done, has to be done, or should be done rather. Because I think a lot of people, especially when they begin to get my age, know that this kind of thing is possible. Long-term care is definitely a possibility in your life or in your family's life, and you may not want to kind of deal with it, but once you have dealt with it and kind of get an understanding of it, it removes the fear factor and it removes the question marks, and it puts a little bit of ease in your life, and you've got that taken care of.
And I think that's a great point, because some of the feedback I get from my clients is once they do this kind of stuff, they definitely feel a weight lifted off their shoulders.
Sure, absolutely.
And if nothing else, if you learn that the options that are available and the trust plans that are available, and you understand how they work, and you see how well they work, and then you now you have the peace of mind knowing I have an instrument that is 100% enforceable, so I can pretty much guarantee that what you want is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so and so at least you get the peace of mind knowing that, okay, I've set this up so my family gets taken care of if something happens to me, or
Brings about a good sense
or
of
my
security.
minor children are taken
Yeah.
care of in such a way. It's not just up for grabs in the courts. That's who's going to take care of them.
Right.
So I've done all this, and that's the peace of mind you can get from doing it. And it's not just a willy-nilly system of documents. It's a systematic statutory scheme of laws under our trust code that governs how this stuff works, and it works very well. I often say this. I often say my best clients. Here's my best client. My best client is somebody that comes into my office and says, "Hey, mom and dad had a trust, and I was a successor trustee." And it was just a well-oiled machine. It went so smooth. Save the sales pitch, Mr. Stan. We want one. We've seen it work. You don't have to convince us. That's my best client. But many people have not seen how they work.
Right.
And so I have to tell you how they work. And but once you understand how it works, then you get the same sense of that's a good fit. That goes smooth. Keeps my kids out of court. And
Yeah. I can tell you the same thing, having dealt with estate sales.
Yeah.
There's families that their parents and the people that have gone on before have planned well, made their wishes known well, and have everything documented, and everything runs so smoothly. But if there's not that, then there's this sense of chaos and wonder, and who's going to do what, and how do we make a decision? And there's a lot of confusion, and sometimes it causes a lot of heartache.
It does.
And so all that can be so avoided if with well-planned in advance estate planning.
It's kind of what the word planning means. Do something ahead of time.
Exactly.
And, you talk about the chaos and the heartache and stuff. A lot of that just comes from the simple concept that these people have to make decisions, like you said. And so they have to make one, right?
Yes.
And when they make one, now maybe it doesn't set easy because they don't know what the deceased really wanted.
Right.
And some people beat themselves up and just, I don't know if I did what they wanted. I don't know what I should have done.
Yeah.
They never told me. I'm just guessing. I hope they don't hate me forever. I mean, it really weighs heavy on some folks.
Yeah.
Now, if you memorialize these wishes, not just like end of life decisions is a good one. If you memorialize that, at the very least, if you disagree with what they wanted, right? At least you're doing what they wanted you to do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I've had some people come in and we talk about on our final disposition form where you can say whether you want to be cremated or buried. And then if you have any pre-bought services, this is where we record what you've done.
Right.
And I can remember a couple of circumstances where, the person the client said, we want cremated. Yes. And the children were there, and there were comments like this: "Well, you're not going to be cremated if I have anything to do about it, because I don't agree with that. I'm going to." And it said, "Well, I want," and Mom says, "I want cremated. I don't want." He said, "Well, if it's my decision, then I'm going to take it." So they fight over that. So, if you can put it into these advanced care directives, into these final disposition documents.
Yes.
Now we've put them in an enforceable document. So at the very least, this person is they have to follow their wishes.
Yes.
So they have to cremate mom. Okay.
Yeah.
And at least they know.
Yes.
They might think, I really hate that she got cremated, but at least they know that is what mom wanted.
Well,
There's some comfort in that if you're at odds that way.
very recently, fairly recently, I should say, a longtime friend of mine just passed, and he had spelled out everything like he wanted it, and who would take care of it, and who would see that it was all done, and there was no question about anything that he wanted done, right down to the end of it. Yep. So it was. And that made it easy on the people who had to deal with it.
I think that's where the benefit is.
Yes.
I think the benefit is not. People say, well, if you buy your funeral insurance or your funeral services and pay for services during life, you get a deal on it. And that's true. But I think the real benefit is you have just removed about 3 dozen decisions from your kid's plate where they don't have a clue what they should do.
Yes.
If somebody in the family passes away, everybody's been in this situation.
Yes.
And you feel like in the next hour, you're going to make 30 decisions. And so you just end up winging it practically. And you're never comfortable with those decisions. You're just saying, well, do this, do that. I got to make a decision, so I'll just do this one.
Right.
Maybe other people are there saying, well, I think that was the wrong decision. I mean, more pressure on top of it.
Yes.
But like I said, if you do the trust plan like we do and you open up to that section about, funeral arrangements and stuff, you say, gosh, they want to be interned. Here's where they want to be buried. Here's where they want their services. Some people get very detailed. Here's the clothes I want to wear, and the songs I want to sing, and who I want to speak. So I've seen things from the whole gambit. Somebody will just write on that form, I don't care, which I don't recommend, but that's your choice. I mean, I try to say why there's an advantage of not doing that, but if that's what you do, that's what you do.
Yeah.
All the way out to, like I said, where a lot of pages of planning and specifics. Now, if those things are important to some people, what happens to them? A lot of people say, I'm gone, throw me in a hole. Some have that attitude.
Yeah.
Some a little more, something to be done. And
so what you eliminate, though, if you plan that and plan the details and make those decisions, then those who are left behind, if you haven't done that, and I've seen this, I've seen it happen, they disagree on what they think you might have wanted.
Yeah.
And
you know what we call that? In the law, we call that substituting your judgment for theirs.
Yeah, they disagree on what they think you, and it's all innocent. I mean, they're all trying to do the right things, this, that, and the other, but it causes such angst in families.
It does.
And it could all be avoided.
It could.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if I can't avoid if you have a disagreement about it, but we can certainly avoid the wrong decisions being made.
Yes.
So, and that's just one small aspect of a trust plan or a will plan is the disposition after death. Of you, of your funeral arrangements.
Well, it has certainly made me think, for me and my wife, as to how we will plan, our latter years and the inevitable, our passing at some point, and what becomes of our estate. And so those are decisions that we're making.
Yeah. Everyone should.
Yeah.
Everyone should. Everybody has an estate.
And that's what this is about. Stan Pierchoski, everybody, Pierchoski Law. And you're located in Pulaski. Of course, we're not anywhere near done, but I was just going to kind of remind everybody that they could call in, 766-9393 if you got questions, 766-9393. And you got the big seminar tomorrow.
I do.
Yeah.
I had a call in to the office, I think it was this week. But I get this question kind of often, especially at seminars. So probably a good one to throw out there.
Maybe we got a call. Let's see if we do. And good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yes, I got an example. My bachelor uncle chose his place to be buried, and then when he died, one of his brothers didn't want him to be buried there, and he told the undertaker he was going to have his mother and daddy taken up and be moved, and the undertaker told him, no, I was here when your mother bought those graves.
Yes.
And you're going to leave them where they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need everything in writing.
That's right. You do. That's what this is about, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, excellent excellent input because you say you need everything in writing. What that means from a legal perspective is you got something that is enforceable.
Yes, exactly.
If you just tell your folks what you want, you do express your wishes. Let's say it's Thanksgiving dinner, you sit everybody down, everybody's visiting, and you say, listen, I'd like to talk about this. I'd like to discuss what Mom and I have decided, how we want to be buried, interned, or cremated, or where we want our ashes spread. I mean, something like that. And so you express your wishes 100%. And let's say it's absolutely crystal clear. Everybody knows exactly what you want. Okay?
Exactly, yes.
You've relayed your concerns, but you've not made it enforceable. Okay, now, when the time comes and it's time to, you can't, if it becomes challenged, you lack a remedy at law because you don't have it memorialized. So when you memorialize something, just like the gentleman said, you have to have it in writing. And again, writing, let's not put it on the back of an envelope and stuff it behind the dresser drawer either.
Yes.
Let's put it in writing in something that's an enforceable document. And now we get and I often tell people, once we do that, that's how I can guarantee you will get what you want. And thank goodness, the example he gave, what do you say, undertaker, funeral director, the person at the funeral home, he acted on his own personal knowledge that he knew what would actually happen before.
Yes. Okay?
So, and it sounds like it worked out the way that the deceased wanted it.
Yes.
But, you can get a bad actor in there somewhere that just, like I said, they substitute their judgment for yours and say, well, I know Daddy said this, but he probably really wanted this or something. And then they want to try and change it.
Yes.
And, I'll tell you what, they talk about, I think the call-in was like moving some people.
Yes.
You know what it takes to...
Now, that's a whole different animal.
Had to do that once in my practice.
Did you
about
really?
Something. And it's like, it was a big deal.
That is a big
in
deal.
Tennessee. It was a lot of paperwork. It was a lot. So that's tough to do. So the funeral director there was spot on by saying, we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole without some kind of. I wouldn't do anything like this without a court order.
That's right.
If I'm ordered to do it by a higher authority, then it gets done. But until then, not happening. But no, and a good example. And I appreciate that. That's what he prefaced the call. Here's an example of what happened. Yeah. Here's somebody tried to do something like that. Tried to substitute their judgment for the deceased, and unfortunately it didn't go through.
Yes.
And I don't get that sometimes, but, people are people. And a lot of it comes out of love and concern. I don't think there's a lot of evil intent when people do that. It's just...
Well, there's also, obviously, and a lot of emotion.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of emotion, and understandably so. But sometimes when we are emotionally caught up in a circumstance, we don't make good decisions. That's why the decisions can be made ahead of time when the emotion's out of it.
Absolutely. It's kind of like when you get an email. It kind of rubs you wrong, right?
That's right.
I have this philosophy because I'm like anybody else. Somebody if I read an email that rubs me wrong, I have this tremendous impulse.
Oh, me too.
To respond. And the times I've ever done that, I'd say probably
always
9 out of 10. I probably wish I had. Right.
Yes.
So we want to act, not react. You know what I mean? So it's always best to calm down with a cool head, think it through. But and that's when a loved one passes away, that is devastating. Sure. And it's not just for the moment or the day. I mean, it ruins you. Yeah. It's just emotional.
Right. Exactly.
And of course, if you're scripturally oriented, staunch Christian type, I mean, you have some comfort and stuff like that. But it's still you
still suffered a loss.
That grief is not. That grief is yours, not not the deceased. That's your grief.
That's right.
And it is a time when you're, I don't want to say out of your head, but probably not the best time to make decisions because they're painful decisions, and you don't want to make them, but you sort of have to make them sometimes. So yeah,
exactly.
Emotions just is not a good time to be making those kind of decisions. So. Anyway, I was saying there was a question that came up that people ask, and a lot of times they ask it during the seminars. They'll say, "What if you write a will and you write a new will, or if you have a will and you do a trust? It'll be what happens to the old will and what should I do with the old will?
Yes.
What happens to the
question.
old? If you do a new will, let's say you have a will and you decide, okay, it's 20 years old, I'm going to do another one, and you do another one. Go look at it. All the wills say in the very first paragraph, this will supersedes all prior wills or codicils. Codicil means an amendment to will.
Okay.
And so the latest in time governs. Okay. Now, if you do a trust, it supersedes a will because the trust passes property through the trust code, and the will passes property through the probate code, and the trust. So the trust kind of makes the will a nullity. It doesn't have anything all dressed up with no place to go. Right? There's no property for it to transfer.
Okay.
Now, people say, well, what do I do with the old will? Well, I recommend, because you don't have to keep a train of the different wills, you know what I mean, a history of them, right?
Right.
I say, well, if you don't want the old will, burn it, throw it away. And a lot of people say, well, that's a legal document. I can't, will I get in trouble for doing that? Well, let me explain what that works. You know, first of all, if you change a will and you change the distribution of property, and somebody in the family is getting less on the latest will than they got on a previous will, when they find out about that, they could, and often do, try to challenge the new will because they if you can defeat the new will, and then the old will is the latest one in time, and they take better under that. Okay, so now, if you don't want that to happen, destroy the old will. And it's like, well, can I do that? Are you telling me I can actually tear up a will? Well, if you go to the code, there's a code called Revocation of Last Will and Testament. Okay, written by our legislature who writes laws, right? When you go to that code, the very first thing the legislature suggests to revoke a will is destruction.
Really?
Yeah. Or then the second thing is, or direct it to be destructed. That's by, you direct somebody to destruct it for you. So it's tear it up and throw it away. So yeah, it's not a legal document.
Interesting.
Somebody might call and say, well, yeah, it is. Well, look at it. It's in a little envelope, and it's got this italic scripting on it. It says, Last Will and Testament of Stan Pierchoski. You open it up, it's all typed. It's on a parchment paper. Yep. It's got seals at the end of it and stamps. It looks really, really legal.
Yes.
Your last will and testament is not a legal document. It is just a piece of paper. It's not a legal document yet. Okay? It's not a legal document until the moment of death. That's what the word testament means.
See, I was like, you had me hooked.
Yeah, last will and testament. The last will and testament. The word testament means at death. Okay.
Yes.
So during life, it is what we call a non-operative document. You can tear it up. You can burn it. You can feed it to the dogs. You can do a new one. You can do anything you want. It has no legal significance until the moment of death. Now, at the moment of death, it does spring to life. It's a valid legal document. Now it's irrevocable, and now it represents the last concerns of the testator of what he wants done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, so if you don't, now, let me preface this with a caution. What will get you in a lot of trouble is destroying someone else's will. Don't do that. When I talk about if you have a will and you want to destroy the old one, it's your will.
Yes.
Don't destroy somebody else's will. That can get pretty ugly. That can even become criminal.
Assume so.
That can even be criminal. So if you're the keeper of somebody's will and you don't like what you get under it, don't do it. Don't do it. So again, let me make that perfectly clear. Again, and I don't on these shows. What I talk about stuff, but what I talk about is not really considered legal advice. If you want to do anything, you really need to consult people and make sure that's okay to do. But just telling you what the statute says.
Yes.
And so it's you can destroy it as long as it's your will and you're alive. And the idea would be you kind of want to substitute it with something.
Yes.
If you destroy it, now you're back in the boat of not having one.
Yes.
And so you probably want to do something that supersedes it, and then you can get rid of it.
Yeah, of course, the real question is, replacing that will with another one.
Or you can keep it. I mean, you don't have to destroy it, but because it's no longer operative because the language in the other one says it supersedes all prior wills and codicils. So the latest instrument in time controls. So some people have come to me and they're changing their will for the fourth time and they have the other three. I mean, if you want to do that, that's okay too. But when the question gets asked, what should I do with the old one? You can keep it or you can get rid of it.
Well, I learned a little right there because I don't guess I thought about the fact that it's not really a legal document or enforceable until you're passing.
So you're telling me now that you learned that, you got to go home and start taping back together your wife's will that you tore
put
up?
all some tape on there.
just teasing. But yeah, again, that was a question that comes up, and I usually get that at the seminar, a lot of seminars.
Very
and stuff,
interesting.
So. But yeah, it is. So again, we'll have that question and answer period. That if you have questions like that tomorrow, bring them up. And we still do the seminars. We're just going to dial them back a little bit because I get asked to speak a lot to organizations. So they're not really public. I mean, they're public for the organization. Like churches often ask me to come and speak to their parishioners. often I get asked by businesses, usually small businesses, to come and talk to their employees about planning and stuff like that.
Right.
Sometimes that comes about because the business owner will come and plan with me, and it's such a good experience for them. They say, I'd like to get everybody that works for me to know about this, and you can use me as an example that I've done it. And often I get asked to talk to banks because a lot of times people, when they're putting property into a trust, you have to involve a bank. If you want to put your checking account or your savings account or a CD account or Morgan Stanley investment account or any kind of thing that represents money in the bank in one format or another.
Yes.
If like in our revocable living trust, we like to move everything we own into that, so it all avoids probate. But to move it in there, you need to deal with the bank because you got a contract with the bank.
Yes.
Now, I can take your real estate and put it in your trust for you. And I can put your personal property in the trust for you. What I can't do is put your bank account in there because you got a contract with the bank and I'm not a party on it. So if I go in there and say, hey, I'd like to put Jeff's bank account in his trust for him, they're going to show me the door for lack of authority to do such a thing.
Yes.
But, we talk about how you do that, and I'm available every step of the way if you need any help. But sometimes, bank over in Pulaski, Bank of Frank Ewing, they see a lot of my trust clients come in there wanting to change their bank accounts to trust. And about 2 years ago, I think, I know all the folks over there because that's the bank I use. And they asked me, they said, could you come and give a presentation to all the bank employees, because we think it'd be helpful if the people up front in the office, that when people walk in with your trust plans and all that, we get a lot of questions from people saying, why are people always coming in and changing these things into trust? Or what's the real procedure for doing that?
Right.
So I give this seminar. It's a little bit from a different perspective. It's kind of from the banking perspective.
Sure.
And it's kind of like, okay, when people come in, we put these things in these books, and they're nice maroon colored book. Miss Nicole at the bank says, we see somebody walking with that book. Before they get 2 steps in the door, we know exactly what they're here for. We start getting the papers ready.
Get the stuff ready.
Start pulling the papers out that they're going to need to change their bank account over into the trust.
Yes.
And they understand it 100%. It goes just as smooth as can be. But it was helpful to them to understand why people were doing that. Because it's because I don't know that they can really ask. Somebody comes in and says, I want to change my bank account into this trust. I think it would be awkward for them or inappropriate for them to say, well, why are you doing that?
And the bank employees, like a lot of people, are not necessarily familiar with it yet.
Yeah. And I imagine if it was a friend, you could probably ask that. But
sure.
So I get asked to speak in a lot of places. So that's one of the reasons why we're kind of backing down on the seminars. But we're still going to do them throughout the year, just a few less than what we've been doing before. So.
Yeah.
But that make it more important if you want to come to one that's near you. Yeah. If you wait for the one that comes to your county, I don't know. It might be a few months, but either way, this is a topic that is heavily procrastinated. Planning.
Very much so.
And I actually have a slide at the end of my PowerPoint that says, don't procrastinate. I've done it myself. I mean, I may have told this story before, but I was practicing law for 7 years before I ever wrote my own will. That's embarrassing, right? No, I wasn't practicing estate planning at the time. I did a lot of criminal work, but it was, and it gets even worse than that. Not only is that embarrassing, I'm a practicing attorney, and I should know better, right? And I didn't have a will, so we finally wrote one. But guess what? It gets worse, and I'm wearing my heart on the sleeve here.
Oh no!
It gets even worse. My wife and I threw together a will and had it witnessed and executed about 8 o'clock at night. On the night before, her and I got on an airplane to go on a vacation where our 3 minor children we were going to leave with Grandma.
Oh, my.
So we just squeaked this thing under the wire. So if you have procrastinated and you think, I need to do this, I talk about it, I think about it, I never do it, don't feel bad. You are in great company. Everybody does it, myself included.
Yes.
One thing about procrastination, it can be cured, okay? You can do whatever it is you're procrastinating. Now, what I have found is why people, you say, well, why do people procrastinate? It is not that they just decide not to do it.
Right.
They don't understand it. And the decision is not clear to them to do it. And when a decision is not clear and you don't feel informed, you hesitate doing it.
Yeah, that's
because you don't want to make a wrong decision, right?
Right.
So you hesitate. You don't know the pros and cons, and you say, well, if I do this, I don't know if maybe it wasn't worth doing, or maybe it'd just be money that was wasted because it doesn't do any good, or maybe I should do something different. That's what these things are designed to do. Let's talk about that. Let's see what is an option available to you. You might very well find, as a matter of fact, I pretty much guarantee something I talk about will get your attention as something to do And then it makes the decision much easier to do because now it's informed, and you know what you want. So it's really helpful all around for you. But again, we don't bring you there at gunpoint. You're welcome to come if you want to come, and you're welcome to stay at home if you want to stay at home. Or,
Right.
we offer it because I get so many questions about what a will is, and a lot of people say, well, I need to write a will.
Yes.
And I say, well, why don't you? Do you want to give some other options some thought?
Yeah.
I said, well, I thought all you could do was write a will.
Yes. And that's what we think.
Yeah. So how can you make a decision
Yeah.
when you don't know what the other options are? So come and learn them. I mean,
Absolutely.
then, and you'll learn a lot of neat things. A lot of these things you read on the internet that are wrong, and now you know how they work, especially in the realm of long-term care. Now, next time you go to a party, you can amaze your friends because you'll be like 1 in 100, if not 1 in 500, that knows and
Understand
understands.
it. That's right.
People always talk about this thing called the 5-year look-back rule. The 5-year look-back rule.
Right.
It's not explained anywhere very well.
No.
So I often say, now next time you go to a party, you can amaze all your friends, and you can be the one that can explain to them how it really does work.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
So
You came up in conversation with me and a buddy of mine who hears you sometimes, not only on this station, but you have other formats that you're in as well.
Radio.
Radio.
I do.
Yeah.
We do a Sunday night show.
That's right.
It's by the same name, Bulletproof Estate Planning, and with your host, Estate Plan Stan.
Yeah.
Out of 99.7 Super Talk, which is Nashville. And I've been doing that come Mother's Day, because I started on Mother's Day. Come Mother's Day, it'll be 3 years.
Really?
And so it's every Sunday night from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's an hour show. It's also call in, but sometimes, not always.
Yes.
Okay, and it'd take me too long to explain why that's that way. But it's kind of like the way they run the radio show up there. So
Yes.
and so, but yeah, it's on 99.7 is the thing. They're all talk radio. They call it
They
Super
are.
Talk. That's the one. Phil,
We have a lot of folks that listen, not only hear our talk radio, but they switch back and forth to the 99.7.
I mean, Phil Valentine was up there. I miss him. He was a great guy. I love what a radio voice he had.
Yeah.
And of course, there's other people in there. When Phil Valentine got upset, it was like, his voice would raise maybe a tiny little bit. You know what I mean? Not like Mark Levin that's on there.
Oh, yeah.
When he gets spun up, you can probably hear him on volume 1 across the other side of the house when he gets spun up. But and they got good folks up there that talk. Some of them are affiliates that are with many, many stations throughout the country,
Yes.
like that. But I'm just there. And I get a lot of calls from out of state because they got such a wide listening audience.
Right,
But
right.
I enjoy doing it, just like I enjoy doing this show. I like talking about what we do. I like answering people's questions. They're good questions,
Yeah.
because we get into things like special needs trust for folks that have special needs, people in the family. That usually sparks a lot of questions. I have a
sure.
I have a seminar that talks about just that. We do it from time to time. I'd have to check to see if something like that is scheduled yet. But we can do that. I've been asked to come to organizations that deal with special needs. Okay, I've been asked to speak at those things, and that's kind of a pinpoint topic. If you got a special needs child, that's an issue.
Yes.
If you don't, you probably don't have that much interest in what special needs trusts do. But if you do, there's some great solutions to what things you're worried about.
Yes.
Because those are the thoughts that keep you up in the middle of the night. If something
Exactly.
happens to me, what's going to happen to this child?
Right, right.
And that's a scary thought. And I don't say that to frighten you. I say that to maybe get off this procrastination
it's
hurdle.
probably something that's on their minds anyway.
And a lot of people have researched a lot of that, and they deal with it. The legislature has done several things. A lot of these programs for special needs children are what they call means-based, where you can only own a certain amount of property. So you got to be careful not to, for somebody, you or Ann Gertrude, to say, "Oh, I'm going to leave this child $10,000." That can be catastrophic to that child and their benefits. But we can leave it to their trust, And now the legislature has incorporated these ABLE accounts. ABLE, A-B-L-E, stands for, let me see if I can get it right, Achieving a Better Life Experience, I think is what it is.
Okay.
And it has to do with these folks can work jobs and, develop their self-esteem, depending on their functioning level, and they can get paid.
Right.
And when they do get paid, it doesn't trigger this loss of benefits because they now have money above what the cap is. And the cap is very low. It's very similar to the 10 care cap, the long-term care cap.
Yeah.
The rules are very similar to qualify. And so you know, if it's an SSI, that's got, you know, means-based tested program, and it's got an amount of property you're allowed to own, and if
Right.
you're over it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
SSDI is a little different. That's disability-based, and it's not dependent on how much property you own. It's
Right.
based on your disability. So when we talk about special needs, you know, there's a couple different things we do. You know, there's first-party special needs trust, third-party special needs trust, who can set them up, what they solve, and they do solve a very important problem. So.
Right. What strikes me, Stan, about this and has since we've started talking, is that I assume, like I think I assume this, and I think others do too. I did in the past anyway, that that the trust world was not really for me. That I didn't really have enough assets, or you know, those kind of things, or it doesn't really apply to me. But what I'm finding out from you is that almost anybody can benefit from this kind of estate planning, regardless of the circumstances, or just like you were just talking about special needs folks that have special needs people in their family. There's just so many ways and so many things that estate planning can address.
Yeah, I mean, the size of the estate should never be the deciding factor.
Yes.
Just rich people do trust. Well,
Yeah.
you know, if a rich people do trust and it goes to court and they spend $80 million resolving it, and they still have $300 million to distribute to the heirs, right?
Yeah.
If your estate is not so big, it's so that much more important that it goes to the people you want it to go to.
Exactly.
If you invite a contest to that,
Yeah.
everything could get consumed, and that's what we don't want to
Yeah,
happen.
exactly.
So the size of the estate is actually may work the opposite direction. The smaller your estate is, the more you may need a trust.
The more you do need it.
So it goes where you want it to be, because where you put it, where it's going to go in a trust is where it's going to end up.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if everything's done correctly, and you know, so yeah, and that is, I get that a lot. I thought that was just for rich people.
Yeah,
I just don't have much.
Yeah, every station of life really this affects and could affect, and of course your own circumstance is always different, but there's a plan. There's something that can be done.
When people say I don't have much, lots of times I'll say, I'll tell you what. Get up one morning, get a pad of paper and a pencil, and just start writing down what you have, and kind of put a value on what it's worth.
Yeah.
And by the time you get through your house, your cars, your old truck, your tractor, the stuff that hooks to your tractor, I mean,
Right.
on it, you'd be shocked at what you're really worth.
That's
you
right.
really would. I mean,
That's right.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you say that, you know, it's I get it, but again, then it needs to fit. So looks like we're coming up on the last of the hour, and
Yeah.
it goes so fast.
Remind everybody about tomorrow and give you contact numbers,
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Tomorrow's a seminar right here at WLX radio station in the back of the building. Come in the double doors, the back of the parking lot. At 10 o'clock, you could call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. And if you want to RSVP or you want to ask questions about it, call my office at Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law. That number is 931-363-7222. 931-363-7222. And you can go to my website, which is estateplanstand.com, and you can get all the information you want from there.
Very good. Estate plan stand, everybody. Bulletproof estate planning. Pierchoski Law, located on the square in Pulaski, Tennessee. Great town over there, our neighboring town. And, of course, the seminar here tomorrow at the Country Cafe behind the studios. 363-7222. Give them a call. Always good to see you, buddy.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
Take care.
She says she's not the one on trial here. I'm Chris Foster. Fox News, Fonnie Willis, the Georgia prosecutor trying former President Trump and others in an election racketeering